When an incredibly shy teenage girl nervously walked onto the massively brightly lit television stage with her heavy electric guitar, millions of unsuspecting viewers completely fell for the brilliant television illusion. The massive network actively portrayed her as a fragile rookie stepping into the intimidating global spotlight for the very first time. They could not have been more completely, violently wrong. The terrifying reality is that this young musical monster had been secretly actively executing a massive, highly calculated artistic masterplan for nearly a decade in the dark shadows. Today, we are completely ripping open the highly classified reality of her unbelievable musical journey. We are brutally exposing the massive hidden financial empire, the highly strategic family operation, and the absolute terrifying truth regarding exactly how a self-taught street performer completely manipulated the massive global television industry. The massive television illusion. The absolute greatest psychological trick the massive television producers successfully pulled off was aggressively convincing the global broadcasting audience that this highly advanced musician was a completely nervous, deeply fragile, inexperienced amateur.
The terrifying reality that the television network deliberately hid from the public is that she had actually actively spent nearly 8 full years aggressively performing live in front of unpredictable crowds on the bustling streets of her tropical hometown. While the massive television judges completely incorrectly assumed she was terrified of the bright studio lights, she was actually utilizing her profound street performing endurance to mathematically calculate her devastating electric attack, making a massive mockery of the manufactured television illusion perfectly. Her psychological resilience was entirely forged in the intensely unforgiving environment of public street performances. The secret ear of a musical genius. To completely comprehend the massive, terrifying depth of her profound musical capability, we absolutely must strictly analyze her incredibly unorthodox, deeply isolated educational background. At the highly fragile tender age of merely 6 years old, completely lacking any expensive formal musical training or basic classical sheet music, she actively began teaching herself incredibly complex musical mathematics strictly by ear. She aggressively spent countless exhausting hours actively repeatedly watching massively complex instructional internet videos, violently absorbing the incredibly dark musical language of classic heavy metal and aggressive hard rock.
She incredibly flawlessly developed a terrifying, absolute perfect pitch in the dark, entirely bypassing the highly traditional, expensive academic institutions. By meticulously studying the microscopic mechanical movements of legendary musicians, she fundamentally rewired her massive neurological pathways. The highly calculated viral explosion. The massive, completely, deeply terrifying turning point in her highly strategic independent career trajectory absolutely did not magically accidentally happen on a corporate television stage. The incredibly explosive global breakthrough violently occurred when she was merely 11 incredibly young years old, successfully flawlessly executing a massively legendary, incredibly complex historic electric guitar solo that typically entirely takes fully grown adult professionals multiple exhausting decades to successfully master. By aggressively broadcasting this terrifying raw electric perfection completely directly to the massive global internet audience, she completely violently bypassed the restrictive traditional corporate music industry gatekeepers, successfully permanently capturing hundreds of thousands of fiercely loyal fans. Her flawless interpretation of the famous electric arrangement paralyzed seasoned veteran musicians globally. The mastermind behind the operation.
Behind every single massively successful independent musical empire, there is almost entirely always a highly brilliant, completely strategic, hidden mastermind actively operating silently in the deep, dark shadows. In this highly specific, terrifying case, the incredibly powerful strategic architect of her entire massive global operation is her highly supportive biological father. He absolutely, completely, aggressively noticed her massive, terrifying, raw musical potential incredibly early, actively, violently transforming himself entirely into her highly dedicated technical manager, massive, complex logistics coordinator, and highly protective stage director. He completely actively ensured she was aggressively, fiercely protected from the massive, toxic corporate exploitation normally waiting to crush talented, innocent young artists. By flawlessly establishing an incredibly strong familial fortress wrapped around her rising career, he mathematically guaranteed her safety. The secret combat training ground. While the massive television network aggressively portrayed her as a highly, incredibly, deeply shy, completely isolated, lonely solo electric artist, the absolute terrifying hidden reality is massively, violently, fundamentally different. She had actively spent massive, incredibly exhausting multiple long years violently, aggressively fronting a highly complex, incredibly professional musical band completely filled with incredibly, deeply, highly talented young musical prodigies.
This intense, completely massive, collaborative, aggressive musical environment actively served as her absolute, heavily, deeply massive, fierce combat training ground. She completely actively transformed from a highly, incredibly shy, entirely nervous young performer into a massively, deeply fierce, highly dominant, absolute musical band leader. By consistently aggressively commanding a massive, highly powerful rhythm section live, she naturally developed an incredibly terrifying, aggressive stage presence. The highly advanced digital weaponry. One of the absolute most deeply, fiercely guarded, entirely massive technological secrets behind her highly, incredibly terrifying, completely flawless, massive electric perfection is her heavily strict, completely aggressive utilization of highly advanced digital musical weaponry. Instead of completely actively entirely relying on incredibly cheap, completely massive standard basic practice equipment, she completely aggressively actively absolutely demands entirely complex, massively deeply highly expensive elite digital modeling gear.
This highly advanced, completely, deeply massive, incredibly terrifying technological infrastructure actively, successfully, strictly guarantees that whether she is playing on an incredibly busy tropical street corner or a heavily massive elite television stage, she actively, mathematically, violently delivers absolute, perfect, elite studio quality electric sound flawlessly, without ever missing a single heavy, highly distorted, aggressive note. The massive hidden empire. The incredibly massive, completely terrifying reality that the highly, incredibly greedy, massive corporate television executives absolutely, entirely, deeply, desperately want to strictly hide from you is her massive, absolute, entirely independent financial power. Long before she completely ever incredibly nervously stepped entirely directly onto their massive corporate stage, she had entirely actively successfully built a highly deeply incredibly massive sustainable completely independent financial empire. Through a deeply complex, completely aggressive combination of massive, highly lucrative internet advertising revenue, entirely massive, incredibly powerful international brand partnerships, and massive, completely fiercely loyal fan support, she completely heavily achieved a massive, terrifying financial valuation entirely before finishing high school. This undeniable independent wealth perfectly, entirely, violently removes the massive, terrifying, desperate financial leverage. The psychological depth of the blues. The massive global television audience was strictly, actively, completely, aggressively manipulated into entirely, deeply, firmly, absolutely believing she was strictly, completely, merely a highly, incredibly, deeply, fierce, fast, electric, heavy rock guitarist. However, the entirely, completely, incredibly, highly massive, terrifying secret, absolute psychological truth is that she actively, entirely, completely, deeply possesses a highly, massively, entirely dark, heavily, deeply, profound, massive, soulful, vocal alter ego. She actively, completely, heavily utilizes highly, deeply, incredibly complex, entirely massive historical blues music to entirely aggressively channel massive, incredibly, deeply, profound, raw human emotional pain and massive, highly deep sorrow that completely, heavily, entirely extends completely, massively far beyond her fragile, deeply young biological teenage years. By actively, perfectly manipulating her completely, incredibly massive, terrifying vocal frequencies, she mesmerizes audiences. The international corporate endorsements. The massive television narrative actively, entirely, aggressively, completely, deliberately erased the massive, terrifying, highly absolute, undeniable reality that she was already highly, completely, internationally, officially recognized by massive, incredibly elite professional global music corporations.
She had absolutely, completely, deeply, successfully secured a massive, incredibly highly prestigious, exclusive artist partnership entirely directly with a massive, elite international electric instrument manufacturing company completely entirely before the massive, incredibly giant television cameras ever completely actively started absolutely officially recording her incredibly highly massive audition safely. This massive, terrifying, undeniable corporate validation absolutely, completely, mathematically proves that she absolutely, completely, heavily never ever actually needed their highly massive, restrictive corporate television reality show to validate her highly terrifying, massive electric genius. The ultimate independent escape master plan. The absolute greatest, completely, entirely, highly terrifying, deeply massive, incredible, ultimate irony of this completely massive, entirely, highly massive corporate television situation is completely, entirely, heavily, deeply, incredibly, absolutely, undeniably exactly this terrifying historical fact. She completely, actively, heavily, entirely, aggressively utilized their massively, incredibly, highly, completely expensive global television broadcasting platform strictly as entirely, completely, deeply a massive, highly, entirely free, massive, highly global promotional advertisement, completely, strictly, carefully designed to successfully, aggressively, independently launch her incredibly massive, independent, completely, deeply, highly aggressive, original recording career entirely, fully, completely, successfully. She completely, violently, heavily, entirely, absolutely played the entire massive, greedy corporate television industry completely, perfectly, entirely like a highly massive, deeply complex, heavy electric guitar.